assembled devotees. This is Tiffany in Pennsylvania. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Tiffany Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining Bhakti Sangha conference call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Shri Guru and Gauranga, and all assembled devotees. Yashamati from Chicago.
Hare Krishna, Yashamati Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining Bhakti Sangha conference call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Bhagavati Vasudha Mataji. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharajis. My humble obeisances to you and all the devotees. This is Krishna Kumari Devidasi from Ghana.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Kumari Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining Bhakti Sangha conference call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to assembled devotees. This is Pooja Arora from Haridwar, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Pooja Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining Bhakti Sangha conference call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to all the assembled devotees. This is Sushmita from Canada.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Now, thank you,
Sushmita.
Mataji.
Okay.
Thank you, Mataji, for Bhakti Sangha call. Thank you so much for giving your time. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Bhagavati Vasudha Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. This is Shama Gauri Devidasi from Charlotte.
Hare Krishna, Shama Gauri Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining Bhakti Sangha conference call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. This is Vinita Gandharvika Devidasi from Texas.
Hare Krishna, Vinita Gandharvika Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining Bhakti Sangha conference call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, this is Balavinda from Texas.
Hare Krishna, Balavrinda. Thank you so much for joining Bhakti Sangha conference call. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Is there anyone who would like to introduce on the call today? Okay.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. This is Valli from Naperville, Chicago.
Hare Krishna, Valli Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining Bhakti Sangha conference call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. This is Padma from Virginia, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining Bhakti Sangha conference call. Hare Krishna. Okay. I will all of you for joining Bhakti Sangha conference call for the Srimad Bhagavatam class today. Today we are really fortunate to have His Grace Radhika Vallabha Prabhu ji to enlighten us on the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam, verse 5.26.18 onwards. Hare Krishna, Prabhu ji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you, Prabhu ji, for giving your valuable time and association in this Bhakti Sangha conference call. We are really fortunate to have you, Prabhu ji. You can please take over the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. Nashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Om Jnanatirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 26. The description of the hellish planets, text number 18. Yas pihava asamvijya ashnati yat kinchana upanatam anirmita panchayagyo vayasa samstutaha sa paratra krimibhojane naraka adame nipatati tatra shatasahasra yojane krimikunde krimibhutaha swayam krimibireva bhakshyamanaha krimibhojano yavat tad apratta aprahuta adaha anirvesha atmanam yatayate. Word to word translation. Yaha, any person who, to, but, iha, in this life, va, or, asam vibhajya, without dividing, ashnati, eats, yat, kinchana, whatever, upanatam, obtained by Krishna's grace, anirmita, not performing, panchayagnya, the 5 kinds of sacrifice, vayasa, with the crows, samstutaha, who is described as equal, saha, such a person, paratra, in the next life, krimi bhojane, named krimi bhojana, naraka adame, into the most abominable of all hells, nipatati, falls down, tatra, there, shata sahasra yojane, measuring 1,00,000 yojanas, 8,00,000 miles, krimi kunde, in a lake of worms, krimi bhutaha, becoming one of the worms, swayam, he himself, krimibihi, by the other worms, eva, certainly, bhakshyamanaha, being eaten, krimi bhojanaha, eating worms, yavat, as long as, tat, that lake is wide, apratta aprahuta, unshared and unoffered food, adaha, one who eats, a nirvesham, who has not performed atonement, atmanam, to himself, yatayate, gives pain. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace S.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. A person is considered no better than a crow if after receiving some food, he does not divide it among the guests, old men and children, but simply eats it himself, or if he eats it without performing the 5 kinds of sacrifice. After death, he is put into the most abominable hell known as Krimi Bhojana. In that hell is a lake of 1,00,000 yojanas wide and filled with worms. He becomes a worm in that lake and feeds on the other worms there, who also feed on him. Unless he atones for his actions before his death, such a sinful man remains in the hellish lake of Krimi Bhojana for as many years as there are yojanas in the width of the lake. Purport. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Yajna Shishta Shinas Santo Muchyante Sarva Kilbishaihi Gunjate tu Agam Papa Ye Pachantyatma Karanat. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is first offered for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. All food is given to us by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman. The Lord supplies everyone the necessities of life. Therefore, we should acknowledge His mercy by performing yajna. This is the duty of everyone. Indeed, the sole purpose of life is to perform yajna. According to Krishna, Yajnartat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha. Tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work binds one to this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction. And in that way, you will always remain unattached and free from bondage. If we do not perform yajna and distribute prasad to others, our lives are condemned. Only after performing yajna and distributing the prasadam to all the dependents, children, brahmanas, and old men, should one eat. However, one who cooks only for himself or his family is condemned, along with everyone he feeds. After death, he is put into the hell known as Krimi Bhojana. Hare Krishna. So we are reading this last chapter, the canto. Shukdev Goswami is describing the hellish planets at the end of the 5th canto. So these descriptions are quite graphic. So I'll just go through the verse once again. So in this particular verse, Shukdev Goswami describes a particular hell called as Krimi Bhojana. So who goes to this particular yajna, particular hell? The first quality he says is that Nirmita Pancha Yajna. One who has not performed the Pancha Maha Yajna. That the person who does not perform the 5 sacrifices, we'll go through that. Nirmita Pancha Yajna. Yat Kinchana Upanatam. Yat Kinchana Upanatam Asamvibhajya Ashnati. Yat Kinchana Upanatam. Whatever the person has obtained by the providence, whatever he has obtained in his life by Krishna's grace, Asamvibhajya Ashnati. One who eats without distributing to others. Asamvibhajya Ashnati. This is the second characteristic mentioned. Apratta Aprabhuta Adaha. Apratta again it means almost same thing. Not giving to others. Without giving to others. Aprabhuta, that means without offering that particular item as a sacrifice without performing a sacrifice, without offering that as a sacrifice to the Devatas, the Supreme Lord, when a person eats, apratta aprabhuta adaha. And such a person, one who is having these qualities, nirmita panchayagya, first quality, was not performed the 5 yajnas. Yat kinchana upanatam asamvibhajya ashnati. Whatever he has obtained in his life without distributing to others, a person eats. And then apratta aprabhuta adaha. Without giving to others and without offering as an oblation to the superior beings when a person eats, then such a person is vayasa samstutaha. He is equal to a crow. Samstutaha means equal. He is equal to a crow. Why he is called as equal to a crow? One of the acharyas, that is Vamshidhara, he mentions that he is equal to a crow because he is without proper achara, without proper conduct. He says that Vayasa tulyair achara hinaihi. He is equal to a crow because he does not have the proper conduct. And then, what is the destination of such a person? Saha paratra. Paratra means in the next life. Destination in the next life. Krimi bojane naraka adame nipatati. So he naraka adame nipatati. He falls down. Naraka adame, the lowest of the hell. Naraka adame. So just like Krishna uses the word naradama. No, what is that verse? Mayaya apahata jnana asuram bhavam ashrita. The first line says, yeah, namam dushkrutino muda prapadyante naradama. So nara adama means lowest among men. So naraka adama means the lowest among the hells. What is the name of the hell? Krimi bojana. He falls down to that hell. And what happens in that hell? What is the punishment there? Tatra shata sahasra yojane. Shata is 100, sahasra is 1000. So 100,000 yojanas. 1 lakh yojanas, that means 8 lakh miles. Shata sahasra yojane krimi kunde. So there is a krimi kunda. There is a lake of worms. The depth of that kunda is that 1 lakh yojanas. In that krimi kunda, swayam krimi bhutaha. He himself becomes one of the worm. Krimibihi eva bhakshyamanaha. And he is eaten by other worms. Krimibihi eva bhakshyamanaha. Krimi bojanaha. He becomes the food for other worms. Tat yavat anirvesham atmanam yatayate. Anirvesham. Nirvesham means what? Nirvesham means one who has performed prayashchitta for the sins. Anirvesham means one who has not performed prayashchitta. So this person who has not performed the Panchamahayagya, who has not distributed the food to others and eats only for himself, such a person has committed a sin. For every sin, one is supposed to perform a prayashchitta. If a person has not performed prayashchitta, then he has to suffer the reaction. Nirvesham means one who has not performed prayashchitta. The same word nirvesham comes in the Ajamil story, 6th canto, 2nd chapter. Ayam hi krita nirvesho. Ayam hi krita nirvesho. Ayam hi krita nirvesho. Janma koti amhasam api Yat vyajahara vivasho nama swasya ayanam harehe. Vishnu Dutas are telling to the Yamadutas, this person Ajamil, he has performed atonement not only for the sins he committed in this life, but in the crores of lives. Janma koti amhasam api. By what act? Yad vyajahara vivasho. Simply by that helpless chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Namastvasti ayanam harehe. So krita nirvesha means he has performed the atonement. So here instead of the word nirvesha, the prefix a is used. A nirvesha. That means that person who has not performed the atonement, he goes to that hell and suffers there. So in the Dharma Sastras, there are 6 sections in the Dharma Shastra. The first section talks about the Varna Dharma in general, the Dharma of the different Varnas. Second section talks about the Ashrama Dharma in general. And third section talks about the Varnashrama Dharma. Varnashrama Dharma is that, suppose for a Brahmana, what is his dharma in the Brahmachari ashram? What is his dharma in the Grihastha ashram? What is his dharma in the Jnanaprastha Sannyas ashram? What is the Kshatriya dharma in the, what is the dharma of a Kshatriya when he is going to the Brahmachari ashram? So the first 2 sections are Varna Dharma and Ashram Dharma in general, and third section is Varnashram Dharma. For each Varna in the specific ashram, what is the Dharma? And then the fourth category, fourth section in the Dharma Shastra is that Guna Dharma. Guna Dharma specifically talks about the Dharma of a Kshatriya, Dharma of a king. There are many Kshatriyas, but especially that Kshatriya who becomes the king. So he has to perform, he has to know how to actually, he has to know certain principles in ruling the kingdom, how to bring together people, how to create dissension among the enemies, how to be diplomatic. There are 5-6 principles are there. So Guna Dharma is related to the duties of a king, Dharma of a king specifically. And then the fifth is the Nimitta Dharma. So Nimitta Dharma, why I'm mentioning is that Nimitta Dharma is the Prayaschitta, atonement which a person has to perform when he has committed a sin. And what is a sin? The definition of a sin is basically twofold. Vihita Ananushtana, Avihita Anushtana. Vihita Ananushtana means those dharmas which are prescribed for a person. When a person does not perform them, then he commits a sin. Avihita Anushtana, those dharmas which are not prescribed for him, when he performs those dharmas, then he commits a sin. So when a person commits a sin, that means either Vihita Ananushtana or Avihita Anushtana, then a person is expected to perform certain Prayaschitta. So what are the Prayashchittas? That is described in the 5th section of the Dharma Shastra, that is Nimitta Dharma. And then there is the 6th section, the Dharma Shastra, that is Sadharana Dharma. Sadharana Dharmas are common for all living entities. There are general principles, universal principles common for all living entities. Narada Muni, when he instructs Yudhishthira Maharaj, he also describes about the Sadharana Dharma. The 7th canto, 11th chapter, verse number 8 to 12, he describes about the Sadharana Dharma. So here, Yavat Anirvesham Atmanam Yatayate. Anirvesham, one who has not performed the prayaschitta, he goes to the Krimi Bhojana hell and then he undergoes these sufferings. So we see, like here it is explained that Anirmita Panchayagya, one who has not performed the Pancha Mahayagya. Let us discuss something about this Pancha Mahayagya. In the Mahabharata, in the Yaksha Prashna, Yaksha is asking 124 questions to Yudhishthira Maharaj. Very interesting section. Is a conversation between Dharmaputra and Dharmaraj. So when there is a conversation between them, the subject matter has to be about Dharma only. It is like a rapid fire question answer on the topic of Dharma. There is one question which is very interesting question, which is in the form of a riddle. Indriyarthan Anubhavan Buddhiman Loka Pujitaha Sammata Sarvabhutana Uchvasan Kona Jivati. So he is asking that who is that person who is Indriyarthan Anubhavan, who is perfectly enjoying the sense objects with his senses. All his senses are working perfectly. The first quality he mentions. Buddhiman, the second quality, who is endowed with intellect, is an intelligent person. And third quality, Loka Pujitaha, respected by the world. Respected by the whole world. And the fourth quality, Sammata Sarva Bhutanam, is accepted by all the living beings. And Uchvasan is breathing perfectly. Means like he's breathing nicely. That means he's a living person. One who is having these five qualities, but still he is considered to be a dead person. Ko na jivati. Who is that person whose senses are functioning properly, who is endowed with intellect, who is respected by the world, who is accepted by all living entities, who is breathing properly, but is still considered to be dead? So this is it's a riddle type of a question actually. And Yudhishthira Maharaj had to answer this question when he is personally hungry and thirsty in the middle of the forest, and in front of him his four brothers are lying down dead, and his wife Draupadi is all alone in the middle of the jungle. He has left the Draupadi in some other place and came there. You can imagine bodily suffering. His intimate brothers are lying down dead. His wife is all alone. At that time, the person is asking such a riddle type of a question. Generally, our mind does not function properly. But Yudhishthira Maharaj answers instantly. Devata atiti brityanam pitrinam atmanashchayaha na nirvapati panchana uchvasanna sajivati. So he says, essentially, the answer is that one who does not perform the Pancha Mahayagya, although he is breathing, he is considered to be dead. What are the Pancha Mahayagya? Devata Atiti Bhrityana. One who does not propitiate by offerings the Devatas, the Devata Yagya. Atiti, one who does not propitiate, one who does not satisfy or serve the guests, Atiti Yagya. And third, Bhrityana, one who does not take care of his dependents. And fourth, one who does not offer oblations to the forefathers, Pitri Yagya. And Atmanashcha, one who does not propitiate one's own self. these one who does not do these 5 yajnas, although he is breathing, but he is considered to be a dead person. Sajivati. So you see, this Pancha Mahayajna is a unique feature in the Sanatana Dharma. So in the Sanatana Dharma, the Pancha Mahayajna are considered to be the duties of a Grahastha. Without the daily performance of these Pancha Mahayajna, from the spiritual point of view, his life becomes worthless. Although from the worldly point of view, he may be considered to be an intelligent person. He may be considered to be, he may be respected by the world, or he may be accepted by all beings. So from the worldly point of view, he may be a great person or a very great person. But from a spiritual point of view, according to Sanatana Dharma, if one does not perform this Panchamaha Yajna, his life becomes worthless, or he is considered to be a living dead person. And this Panchamaha Yajna also comes in other places. In the Manusmriti also comes. The Taittiriya Aranyaka, there also mention of the Panchamaha Yajna. So let us see this. What are this Panchamaha Yajna? Deva Yajna. The first is Deva Yajna, worship of the Devatas. Because the Devatas supply different things. Water, air, different food grains, rains. The Prabhupada says in one purport in 4th canto, simply by taking birth in this world, one becomes indebted to different personalities, Devatas, Pitras, other living entities. So, Deva Yajna means worship of the Devatas, and Pitru Yajna. Pitru Yajna is basically the Tarpana one is supposed to offer to the forefathers. The Shraddha one is supposed to perform to one's forefathers. Because they have given in particular certain culture. So all these yajnas are rooted on the principle of gratitude. So when we recognize certain culture, contribution, training given by our forefathers, father, grandfather, we exhibit our gratitude by repaying them by performing Shraddha, Tarpana. And then there is Atiti Yajna. Atiti Yajna is basically food offered to the guests in respectful worship. Over whichever guests come, we take care of them, or we actually satisfy them. And then there is Britya Yajna. Britya Yajna is the maintenance of those who are dependent on ourselves, dependent on oneself. For example, certain servants are working in our house, or certain people are employed under us. So maintain them, take care of them. There was one doctor in Bombay, Dr. Alva, was saying that it's like very great, very genuine Vaishnava actually. There's many Shaligram Shilas at home. He was mentioning that during the COVID lockdown period, he said he had a zero income. He had to close down his clinic because he would send the people who would go to the Middle East would come to his clinic for checkup. But the entire like foreign trip, everything is stopped. So therefore, he had to close down the clinic. But then there were people who were working under him. But he said that I paid everyone their monthly salary, although I had zero income, but I paid them, and because they had their family under them. So Britya Yajna is basically taking care of the dependents. And then there is the fifth is the Atma Yajna. Atma Yajna is also called as Brahma Yajna, is basically nourishing one's own soul. Nourishing one's own soul. That is the Atma Yajna or the Brahma Yajna. So if we see that one of the important thing is that Deva Yajna and Pitra Yajna, these two yajnas are basically satisfying or showing our gratitude towards the beings who are above us. Devatas are in the higher planets, Pitras are also in the higher planets, or those who are superior to us. So Deva Yajna and Pitra Yajna are basically satisfying those living entities above us. And Atiti Yajna and Bhuta Yajna, they refer to the beings around us and below us. There are different, say, suppose guests who are coming to our house. They are people who are around us. Bhuta Yajna is people who are working below us, who are dependent on us. So Aditi Yajna and Bhuta Yajna refers to beings around us and below us. And Atma Yajna is the duty to one's own Atma. The duty of basically cultivating spirituality and realizing the Atma and the Paramatma. So we see, you can see, try to appreciate this uniqueness of the Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan Dharma, there can be no higher or more comprehensive enunciation of the duties of a man than those that are denoted by the Panchamahayajna. Such a comprehensive concept of the duties of a man is described as Sanatan Yajna. You have duties towards the beings above than you. You have duties towards the people who are around you and who are below you. And you have duties to your own Atma. Now, Atma, nourishing one's Atma is basically satisfying the Paramatma. So essentially in Sanatan Dharma, it tells that every man should fulfill this 5 daily duties in his life, irrespective of the caste or creed. So this is the fundamental call of every practitioner of Sanatan Dharma. That fundamental call is mentioned, is given in this particular verse spoken by Yudhishthira Maharaj. So, like normally, like that is the nature of the integral dharma. Integral dharma means there is an integral dharma and isolated dharma. Isolated dharma, a person practices some dharma but neglects the other dharmas. But in integral dharma, a person tries to practice all the dharmas. Yeah, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that yasyasti. What is that verse?
Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati akinchana.
Not that verse.
Okay.
Not that. It is said in the 11th canto that one who completely surrenders to Lord Mukunda, Devarshi Bhutapta Nrinam Pitrinam Na Kinchano Nayam Rinicha Rajan Sarvatmanaya Sharanam Sharanyam Gato Mukundam Parihrityaka. So one who is completely surrendered to Lord Mukunda, he becomes freed from all the debts towards the Devas, Rishis and Pitras. Somebody has to be muted. So he becomes freed from the debts towards all the personalities. So in that sense, the complete surrender to Krishna, Sarvatmanaya Sharanam Sharanyam, becomes relieved of these things. Yudhishthira Maharaj is a completely surrendered person to Krishna. Yudhishthira Maharaj was such a person, nothing would satisfy him except the service to Krishna. Just like we have the Nirjal, Pandava Nirjal Ekadashi coming up. when the time for breaking the fast comes, nothing would satisfy the person except some lemon water for quenching one's thirst. Nothing would satisfy means any sweet words or offering some garland or chandan. Nothing would satisfy the person except offering some lemon water. Similarly, Yudhishthira Maharaj was such an elevated devotee that nothing would satisfy him except the service to Krishna. That was the level of his devotion to Krishna. But even though he was on such a level, but Yudhishthira Maharaj is called as Dharma Veera. That means one who was heroic in performing the dharmic duties. One who was heroic, one who exhibited heroic devotion in performing the different dharmic duties. That means satisfying the devatas, pitras, Atiti Yajna, Bhuta Yajna, etc. So, because as a king, he actually wanted to set example for all the people under him, how one should perform this yajna to lead a dharmic way of life. So similarly, that of course we may not be the kings, but we may not be the king who are leading the whole kingdom, but everyone is a leader in some way or other. One is setting example for others in a family or in sometimes in a small society or something. So we give our utmost surrender to Krishna, our heart surrender to Krishna. Although that utmost surrender to Krishna completely takes care of all the debts, but it is important for the devotees also to set dharmic examples by performing these dharmic duties to the best extent as possible, following the footsteps of Yudhishthira Maharaj and so many other examples in the Shastra. And Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, when he talks about this different types of yajnas in the 4th chapter, he says that he talks about the different yajnas, and then he says, Sarvepi ete yajna vido yajna kshapita kalmasha yajna sishtam mridabhujo yanti brahma sanatanam. So all of these knowers of sacrifice destroy the sin through the sacrifice. For example, Krishna mentions the different types of yajnas. So for example, he says that first he explains that Daivameva apare yajnam yogina paripasate. Some karma yogis engage in the worship of the devatas. Others offer oblations into the fire of Brahman by means of the ladle. Shrotradin indriyan anye samyamagnishu juzvati. The brahmacharis, they offer the senses into control of the senses. They're completely supposed to control the senses. And the householders, they offer the sense objects into the fire of the senses. I mean, they can accept the sense objects, but in a detached manner. That is the yajna they have to perform. And then Sarvan Indriya Karmani, Prana Karmani Chapare. There are other people who offer all the activities of the senses and the pranas into the fire of the mind, lit by the knowledge of Atma. And then Dravya Yajna, there is a Dravya Yajna, there is Tapasya, performance of austerities, giving Yajna of charity, or Yajna of going to holy places, and the Yajna of studying the Vedas, Swadhyaya, Yajna of studying reciting the Vedic mantras, Jnana Yajna, the Yajna of trying to understand the meaning of the Vedic mantras, Vedic sentences. Trying to understand the meaning, sometimes it is a troublesome, it's an effort involved. Yataya Samshita Vrata. So all these are different types of actually, to perform all these yajnas, one has to make a great endeavor with intense actions. Yataya samshita vrata. And then there are other who actually control the breath by inhalation, exhalation, etc. In this way, there are various types of yajnas. After describing all these yajnas, Krishna says that Sarvepi eto yajna vido yajna kshapita kalmasha. By performing these different types of yajna, one destroys the sin through the sacrifice. And yajna sishtam rita bhujo. When a person enjoys the material results of the sacrifice, then whatever he enjoys, it becomes purified. His action is purified. Yanti Brahma Sanatanam, then the person attains the eternal Brahman. Yanti Brahma Sanatanam. And Nayam Lokosti Ayajnasya Kutonya Kurusattama. So the person who does not perform the sacrifice, who does not perform any of the yajnas, Panchamaha Yajna, etc., he attains nothing in this life than what to speak of liberation. Kutonya Kurusattama. And then Krishna says that so in this way there are many types of sacrifice have been described in the Vedas. Know that they are all based on the prescribed actions of body, mind and words. And knowing and practicing this, you will be liberated. Karmajan viditan sarvan evam jnatva vimokshase. Evam jnatva vimokshase. Knowing these sacrifices and practicing this, you will be liberated. So in this way, Krishna also mentions the importance of the performing these various types of yajnas. And let us, if we see the practical example, I already mentioned the example of Yudhishthira Maharaj. And if you see the example of Krishna, Krishna also performed the Pancha Mahayajna. The 10th canto, 70th chapter is described that Upastaya Arkam Udyantam Tarpayitvatmana Kala Devan Rishin Pitrin Vriddhan Vipran Abhyarcha Chatmavan Denunam Rukma Shringinam Sadinam Mauktika Shajam Payasvininam Grishtinam Savatsanam Suvasasam. So each day Krishna worshipped the rising sun. Upastaya Arkam Udyantam. And he propitiated the Devatas, Devan, Rishin. He propitiated the sages, Pitrin and the forefathers, who are all his own expansions. Actually. Like when we offer the water, the root, everything is satisfied. Krishna himself is the root, but still he is actually showing the dharmic example in the Dwaraka by performing these dharmic duties. And then the self-possessed Lord would then carefully worship his elders and the Brahmanas. Vipran Abhyarcha Atmavan. And to the Brahmanas, he would offer actually herds of tame and peaceful cows with gold-plated horns and pearl necklaces. And he would offer 13,084 cows to the learned Brahmanas. And another place in the 10th canto, in the I think 84th chapter, somewhere there, it is said that Rinais Tribir Vijo Jato Devarshi Pitranam Prabhu. A member of the twice born is born with three kinds of debts. Those owed to the Devatas, to the sages, and to the forefathers. So if a person leaves his body without first liquidating these debts by performing sacrifice to the Devatas and by studying the scriptures left forth by the sages and by begetting children and performing Shraddha to the forefathers. If a person leaves his body without performing this, then anisthirya tyajan patet, he will fall down to a hellish condition. This verse comes in the 10th canto, I think 84th chapter. So the Panchamahayajna, the significance behind the Panchamahayajna is that it is described that every grahastha, every person in this world, inevitably he performs the 5 sins. In the Vishnu Smriti, it is said that Kandani, Peshani, Chulli, Udakumbicha, Marjani, Pancha Suna, Grahastasya, Tabi Swargam na Vindati. The Grahastha does not enjoy Swarga by commission of the 5 violent actions towards other living beings caused by using the mortar, grinding stone, the stove, the broom and the water pot. Because in the modern time, they are replaced by, we may not have grinding stone or mortar, but we may be using some mixie or grinder like that. But essentially, one inevitably performs these 5 sins. So therefore, it is described that one is supposed to perform the Panchamahayajna in the Shastra. The demigods are honored with the Deva Yajna, forefathers are offered by the Pitru Yajna, human beings are satisfied with the guests, living beings are shown respect by the Bhuta Yajna. And there is another very interesting section in the Mahabharata when Yudhishthira Maharaj has gone to the forest after they lose everything in the gambling match. Yudhishthira Maharaj goes to the forest. And when he goes to the forest, there are so many sages, so many brahmanas and brahmacharis, they follow Yudhishthira Maharaj. And Yudhishthira Maharaj was very unhappy to see these brahmanas are following him. And Yudhishthira Maharaj, and there is that interaction between the Yudhishthira Maharaj and those brahmanas is so profound. In that also we can see Yudhishthira Maharaj, how he was conscious of performing his duties. So Yudhishthira Maharaj says that we are robbed of our kingdom, prosperity and everything. And we are going to live on fruits, roots and whatever is available in the forest. And moreover, forest is full of dangers. If you stay with us, you will have to suffer much misery in the forest. And when we see the sufferings of you Brahmanas, the sufferings of the Brahmanas overwhelms even the celestials. Even they can't tolerate the sufferings of the Brahmanas. What to speak of me? So therefore, please don't stay with us, because I don't have anything to take care of you and you will suffer in our company, and I cannot tolerate all of you Brahmanas going through the suffering, all of you Brahmacharis going through the suffering. And then the Brahmanas reply, we are ready to go where you are going. Please don't abandon us. We are devoted to you because you follow the path of true Dharma. And when Yudhishthira Maharaj hears this, he says that I always have great devotion towards the Brahmanas, but then I have lost everything in this gambling match. This has overwhelmed me. And my brothers are in great distress. My brothers are stupefied with grief. And the grief has overtaken them. And for the distress with the insult which they had to witness, the insult of Draupadi, which they had to witness, and for the loss of the kingdom, they are completely in a great distressful situation. They are in a stupefied state. So I cannot employ my brothers who are in such a distressful situation to perform painful tasks of getting some food for you. And it is described that there were some 60,000 Brahmanas or Brahmacharis who are following the Yudhishthira Maharaj. To feed them, Yudhishthira Maharaj is saying that I cannot employ my brothers who are in such a difficult condition to feed all of you. Then the Brahmanas replied to Yudhishthira Maharaj, so do not allow any, don't be anxious to maintain us. And because we will be satisfied with whatever is easily available in the forest. Don't actually think of actually feeding us. We will take care of ourselves. And in fact, we will be there with you and we will do good to you by performing meditation and prayers. And we shall entertain you by having pleasant conversation with you. By speaking, we will speak from the scriptures and we will have conversation with you. And in this way, we will entertain you, we will please you. And by, in turn, by speaking to you, we ourselves will be cheered in return. We shall ourselves be cheered in return. At that time, Yudhishthira Maharaj says that there is no doubt that it must be as you say. I am ever pleased to be in the company of the Brahmanas. But then my fallen condition makes me regard myself as an object of reproach. And how can I see that you are all my well-wishers? You do not deserve to suffer any trouble. How can I see you not eating proper food? How can I actually see you all subsist on food procured by yourselves? So you see, Yudhishthira Maharaj, even in such a distressful situation where he lost everything, he is actually thinking of how I am not able to, how can I see being, how can I see you just eating some simple fruits and roots in the forest on your own? It is difficult for me to be just, you go through all these sufferings. So at that time, from the Brahmanas, the leader Shaunaka Rishi speaks to Yudhishthira Maharaj. And then, in fact, he speaks like many verses, but I'll not go through all of them. So Shaunaka Rishi says that 1,000 causes of grief and 100 causes of fear overwhelm the ignorant day after day, but they cannot overwhelm the learned people. Intelligent men like you never allow themselves to be deluded by acts which are opposed to true knowledge, which is fought with every kind of evil and which is destructive of salvation. And then he says that men like you are never stupefied by poverty, or by meeting with difficult ways, or by afflictions that overtake his friends, or by bodily or mental miseries. So I shall recite to you the shlokas which are chanted by Janaka Maharaj on the subject of controlling the mind and the subject of controlling the soul. So he speaks a certain very elevated spiritual instructions spoken by Janaka. And then Shaunaka Rishi speaks about how attachment is the root cause of suffering. He says that there are 4 causes of sufferings of the body: disease, contact with the painful things, and extreme hard labor, and not getting the desirable things. These are the 4 causes of suffering. And he said disease may be allayed by application of medicine, but mental ailments are cured only by yoga meditation. And then he says that just like a hot iron ball makes the water of a jar hot, similarly, when a person is having a mental grief, it brings also bodily pains. When the mind is affected, it also affects the body. And just like water quenches the fire, similarly, knowledge removes the mental ailments. Knowledge is a medicine for the mental ailments. And when the mind enjoys the peace, body also enjoys the peace. And then he says that, he starts speaking that attachment is the root cause of all the mental agonies. It's the attachment that makes every creature miserable and brings on every kind of misery. Attachment produces joy and grief of every kind. From attachment comes all desires. From attachment comes all the love for the different objects of this world. And just like fire in the hollow of a tree consumes the entire tree itself to its roots, similarly, an attachment, however little it may be, destroys both dharma and artha. And then he explains that, therefore, essentially, he says that one should be detached. Nobody should place his attachment on either friends or on wealth which he has earned. Like the lotus leaf, which is ever drenched by water, souls of those men who are capable of knowing and everlasting, knowing the everlasting, that means who are knowing the eternal things, and of men who are devoted to pursue the Paramatma, the eternal things, and who are learned in the Shastras, such people can never be touched by attachment. And then there is one interesting verse. He says that if a piece of meat is in the air, it will be devoured by the birds. If the piece of meat is on the ground, it will be devoured by the animals. If it is in the water, it will be devoured by the fishes. Similarly, a man having wealth is exposed to dangers wherever he might be. Then Shaunaka Rishi starts speaking about the miseries arising from the wealth. Like essentially, he speaks about attachment, detachment, and the miseries arising from wealth. Just like he says that wealth is the root of boastfulness, pride, fear, and anxiety. And then he says that thirst for wealth can never be assuaged. Wealth leads to so many miseries. It leads to envy. So therefore, to abandon the wealth is painful. But even those men who are cherished become enemies for the sake of the wealth. So therefore, one should develop detachment from the wealth, and contentment is the highest happiness. So in this way, Shaunaka Rishi is giving instruction to Yudhishthira Maharaj, saying that please be detached and give up your desire for the wealth. You should not covet anything, and if you want to acquire virtue, free yourself from all the desires. So at that time, Yudhishthira Maharaj gives a profound reply. He says that my desire for wealth is not for the purpose of enjoying it, but rather I desire the wealth only for the support of the Brahmanas. Because the current Bhagavatam verse says that Sam Vibhajya Ashnati, one who eats without sharing with others. Without sharing with others. So Yudhishthira Maharaj is saying that the desire, why I desire wealth is that only for supporting the others. So therefore, O Brahmana, for what purpose would one like to lead a domestic life if he cannot support those people who follow him? So the whole theme of this Bhagavatam verse which we are discussing today is that Prabhupada's purport also, Prabhupada talks about not sharing the food with others, or not offering the food as a sacrifice and then eating the food for oneself. So Yudhishthira Maharaj says that for what purpose would you like to lead a grahastha life if he cannot cherish and support those that follow him? So all creatures are seen to divide their food amongst themselves, those who depend on them. Divide their food among those that depend on them. So therefore, a person who is in the grahastha ashram should give a share of his food to the brahmacharis and the sannyasis who have given up cooking. And then he says that the houses of good men can never be in want of grass. That means when a person is having a house, in that house, 5 things should never be in scarcity. A place for the guest to come and sit, little water to offer to the guest, and some sweet word. When the guest comes, you should never fail to offer some sweet words to the guest. So these things should never be in scarcity. And giving some food to the hungry, and giving some place for the fatigued people. If you have seen the traditional houses in India, not the flat system, the traditional houses in the villages, even now if you go to Indian villages, you will see outside the house, outside the door, there would be a particular place. I don't know what you call in Hindi or other English, but in Tamil it is called as Thinnai. Thinnai means a particular place. So many times people would be traveling by walking or different modes of transport. And when they would feel tired, they want some place to sit down or just lie down. Therefore, outside every house, there would be outside the door, there will be a place where travelers can just lie down and just they can just relieve themselves of the tiredness. So in that way, even the houses were constructed in order to actually perform some service to the people, at least by offering some seat to the people who can actually take rest outside the house. So Yudhishthira Maharaj says that any house of a grahastha, in these things should never be in scarcity. And then he says that when a guest comes to your house, 5 things should be done. One should have a pleasantly look at the guest. One should have a pleasant, one should have eye contact with the guest. And then one should have a cheerful heart. The mind should all be in a cheerful mood towards the guest. And one should speak sweet words to the guest. And then when the guest is leaving the house, one should get up and go till a particular distance to give send-off to the guest. And sometimes, like yesterday, I was boarding a train from Pandharpur to Bombay. When I boarded the train, in the compartment, just almost just few last minute, and there were some 5-6 people were coming out of the compartment. So we wondered, like, why so many people they came to give send off to some person. So the culture is there that when somebody's guest is leaving, they would go and send off to the person. One person may be leaving in the train, but sometimes it may appear that 10 people are leaving. But after the train leaves, you wonder that 9 people have come to actually give send off to the person, and only one person is leaving. So Yudhishthira Maharaj says that one should actually advance towards the guest till the person leaves to a particular distance. In this way, he talks about this different types of yajnas. So we can see that we can see in this section that this Panchamaha Yajna, essentially those who perform does not perform this, those who do not perform this Panchamaha Yajna, those who do not share the food with others, such people go to this hell called as Krimi Bhojana. And yeah, these are some points which came to my mind in relation to this verse. And so in summary, what we discussed today, we discussed about the importance of Panchamaha Yajna from the Yaksha Prashna. We also discussed the example of Yudhishthira Maharaj and Lord Krishna performing the Panchamaha Yajna. And we discussed the conversation between the Yudhishthira Maharaj and the Shaunaka Rishi and the Brahmanas in the Vanaparva of the Mahabharata. So when, I've just concluded this point. When the Yudhishthira Maharaj, he speaks about how it is important for the Grahastha to take care of the dependents, to take care of the Brahmanas, to take care of the guests. He's saying that all of you are actually coming along with me. I cannot tolerate you eating food on your own when I am unable to provide anything. So then at that time, Yudhishthira Maharaj approaches Daumya Rishi and he asks for a solution. Please give me a way by which I can feed all these Brahmanas. Is there any way by which I can feed all these Brahmanas? Then Daumya Rishi says that you worship the sun god because sun maintains everyone. Sun is the source of all the vegetation. You worship the sun god and he gives some Sahasra Nama. I think 1008 or 108 names of sun god. So Yudhishthira Maharaj chants those 108 names of sun god and worships the sun god. And when sun god Suryadev appears, then Yudhishthira Maharaj asks Suryadev to give to provide some means by which he can take care of all the guests and the Brahmanas, Brahmacharis. Then the sun god gives what is called as the Akshay Patra. So Akshay Patra was obtained by Yudhishthira Maharaj by worshipping the sun god, demigod, but for what purpose? To serve the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas. So Kshatrajit also obtained a benediction from the sun god in the form of the Shamantaka jewel, which produced many kilograms of gold every day. But he was using that gold only for himself without sharing it with others. So therefore, that benediction of the sun god in the form of the Shamantaka jewel, that benediction became a curse. That benediction became the cause of his death. That benediction became the cause of his death, Satrajit. But Yudhishthira Maharaj also obtained a benediction from sun god, Akshay Patra, but he used it only for the purpose of serving others. And then after serving all the guests, then Draupadi would feed the Pandavas, then finally she would eat the food. Therefore, we can see Pandavas exemplifying this principle for performing this Panchamahayagya. At the same time, they are the pure devotees of Krishna. So, these are some thoughts which came to my mind. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you. Thank you so much for this very beautiful, detailed class. It was very enlightening to know about the Panchamahayajnas and how Yudhishthira Maharaj followed in the forest and how he used his benediction in the right way. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. So if anybody have any questions or realization, please they can ask now.
Hari Bol Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. About this Gruhasthas performing this, yagnas, I feel that as a Gruhastha, I fail to do this, especially when you live outside India and, where this kind of customs and things are, impractical because of dangers, inviting some unknown person and, even speaking to even opening doors, So that kind of things are kind of impractical, I feel. But having read Prabhupada Maharaj and, all this, I feel that doing this Sankirtan Yagna regularly and trying to do some kind of yagnas, like offering food to guests or at the temple where you can take food and distribute prasadam like that. Would that suffice or not? Because ultimately, when Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Krishna says, Sarva Dharman Parityajya, if we are taking as much shelter as we can for performing Bhakti Yoga, will it compensate or what should we do?
See, one is the practical application, theory and practical application. See, it's not that suppose whether abroad or even in any modern cities in India, when there are like a danger from different, suppose thieves or different people, anybody can just keep the house open, anybody comes inside the house, they may try to steal something. One has to see proper security of the house, but at the same time, it is important we can follow this principle, by say inviting devotees or say sponsoring for the say devotees in the temple or annadan, giving to the say needy people. See, if we read the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, one of the item of sadhana bhakti, not giving, I think, pain to other living entities. Bhakti Vinod Thakur says that he says that sometimes in the name of devotee, the name of being a devotee, one should not fail to show certain basic kindness. When you see somebody, poor person who is in need of some food, give some food. Or when you see somebody who is in need of some basic clothes, give some clothes. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions this, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu commentary in the Chaitanya Shikshamrita. It may appear that these are not related to Krishna, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that one should not forget the basic acts of kindness. Otherwise, if we fail to show those basic acts of kindness, and by that our devotion will get affected. Our devotion will get contaminated by those certain cruel mindset or something. So yeah, in a practical, this one is not saying our modern houses, it's not that we keep the house open, anybody can enter the house or something.
Yeah.
But the principle is that the principle of doing the yajna should be there. And definitely, as I mentioned, that watering the root of the tree satisfies all the parts of the tree, that every one of us know. But Sarva Dharman Parityajya, Arjuna heard that, the Pandavas heard that, but still they performed these other yajnas, because Arjuna was the first person who got Sarva Dharman Parityajya. But still they performed these other yajnas as a responsible devotee, because in order to set a dharmic example for others. We may not be kings, but at least we try to be a responsible devotee to the extent possible. Yeah, to practice this yajnas in the strictest sense possible. It may be impractical depending on the situation, etc. But at the same time, our shastras are very flexible actually. Our shastras are very flexible. If you cannot practice in this particular way, you can practice at least this way. Just like Krishna says, gives different steps in the 12th chapter. If you cannot fix your mind on it, fix your intelligence on it. If you cannot do that, you do this. Similarly, if, for example, even the Shraddha, if you say Shraddha, so there is the best way of performing Shraddha is one way. Say performing the fire yajna, inviting a proper Brahmana, chanting the Vedic mantras, etc. So if a person cannot do that, then one can do in another way. If a person cannot do that, one cannot do in another way. Like that, different steps are there. Suppose even for Antim Samskara, suppose if you don't even get the body of the person, sometimes the body of the relative itself you didn't get. During COVID time, some people, you are only given the ashes or something like that. Or sometimes they don't get even that. So, but there are shastras, they give flexible means of how to perform in this thing. So, to the extent we can perform them in Krishna consciousness, Rupa Goswami has given the principle of Anya Bilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. our bhakti should not be covered by jnana and karma. He does not mention jnana karmadi shunyam. Jnana karmadi shunyam, like for example, this Pitri Yajna or Deva Yajna, they all come under the category of karma, fruitive activities. But Rupa Goswami is not saying that pure devotional service does not mean that any activities of Deva Yajna, Pitri Yajna should not be there only. He is not mentioning jnana karmadi shunyam. He says jnana karmadi anavratam. So in the right consciousness we can perform. In that way we can set a dharmic example along with being a devotee.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Just few comments in the chat. Jyoti, Hare Krishna, Dandavas Pranam Prabhuji. Could you please tell us how to deal with non-devotees because lot attitude issue arises? How to take care of our duties and attitudes in today's world?
Quite a general question. How to deal with the non-devotees? A lot of attitude issue arises. We have to see more specific thing. In general, we have to deal with them respectfully. We have to deal with them in such a way that they develop appreciation for the devotees. They develop appreciation for bhakti. So when you deal with the non-devotees, we have to deal with them in such a way that when they start appreciating the devotees, then they start accumulating the ajnata sukriti. So that is why this principle of performing the duties, one of the important thing is that suppose when the devotees are little irresponsible in their duties, they may be performing bhakti properly. They are irresponsible in their duties. That irresponsible nature of the devotees will attract the criticism of the non-devotees. When the non-devotees criticize the devotees, then they commit aparadha. So therefore, it is important that devotees perform the duties responsibly. And when the non-devotees see that these devotees are responsible even in their duties, and then the non-devotees, they develop appreciation for the devotees, and by that they develop ajnata sukriti. So that is why sometimes the people say that once a person becomes a devotee, he stops all these things. They give up all connection with the family, they stop all the shraddha, they stop all these things. So these people are fanatics, sometimes people say that. So it is important that devotees also responsibly perform their duties so that will, by that they can get the, they can attract the appreciation of the non-devotees towards the community of the devotees. So how to take care of our duties and attributes in today's world? So that is the whole thing actually. That is the oftentimes in our life, the conflict between bhakti and our duties arises. So therefore, it is important to balance our bhakti and the duties. Mam anusmara yudhyacha. This conflict between bhakti and our duties arise even in the case of the Supreme Lord. Even in the case of the Supreme Lord, the call of duty and the call of love, a person is pulled in both the directions. And but the Lord actually balances between the call of duty and the call of love. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he wanted to go and perform. When he came to Jagannath Puri, he wanted to perform his sannyas dharma by traveling everywhere, by preaching, by spreading the holy names. That was the duty as a sannyasi, varnashram dharma. That is a duty as a yugavatara, to spread the yuga dharma. The internal reason for Mahaprabhu's appearance is that to taste the love of Srimati Radharani, to experience the love of Srimati Radharani, happiness she experiences. But then the external reason, the external duties are spreading the yuga dharma. And because he was a sannyasi, he had to He has to travel and preach, perform the duties of a sannyasi. And he knew that if I allow my intimate devotees to come along with me, they will not allow me to perform the austerities of a sannyasi. So therefore, Mahaprabhu found fault with the intimate associates. Actually, indirectly he was glorifying them, but he found faults with them with the aim of not, because he didn't want to take them along with him, because they would not allow him to perform the austerities of a sannyasi. So Mahaprabhu was caught between. Mahaprabhu said in Ramananda Samvad, the greatest suffering in a life is to be separated from the devotees. But the same Mahaprabhu, when Sarvam Bhattacharya collapsed and became unconscious when Mahaprabhu was leaving for South India Yatra, Mahaprabhu did not even turn back. He behaved as if like a stone without any emotions. Because the call of duty to perform his sannyas dharma, to perform the duty of a Yugavatara, he had to perform that. And therefore he did not allow himself to be affected by he had the deep love towards Sarvam Bhattacharya, but he actually suppressed all his emotions. So the call of love was there towards the devotees. The same Mahaprabhu who heard from Ramananda Rai that the greatest suffering is to be separated from the devotee. But when he was separated from the devotee, when he saw in front of him the devotees were lying unconscious, he just behaved as if like an emotionless person. So sometimes the call of duty is more prominent. So the call of love has to be kept within our heart. So that balance between the call of duty and the call of love. When a person escapes the duties by giving bhakti as an excuse, one will not get deep realizations in his life. But when a person tries to balance these duties and the path of bhakti, in that one will go through different struggles actually. But when a person goes through the struggles, trying to perform bhakti at the same time trying to be as responsible as possible, then when a person goes through the struggle, then such a devotee will get very deep realizations in his heart. So that's what I can think of. Correct.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for the answer, because you have raised the standards. I was not looking for that particular, I was not looking into that way, but you have given me very, very high level of standard, because we are living in this world. Everything is contaminated and it's materialistic world. I was thinking in very narrow-minded way. Thank you so much for your guidance and teachings. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Mataji, for that wonderful question and taking it in a way. Yes, Prabhuji, there is one more question by Balaram Prashad. Yes, Prabhu, shall I read it?
How to perform Shraddha based on ISKCON and Prabhupada. Some say best is Archana, charity to Brahmanas and Annadana. Please enlighten us. See, one of the thing maybe we can say it is something lacking in ISKCON, or maybe it will come up in the future. So every sampradaya, they have their own Smriti Shastra. Smriti Shastra means how to perform these different duties, how to perform the different samskaras, how to perform there are like I think 10 or 15 important samskaras are there. Antim samskara, Shraddha, Namakarana samskara, Garbhadana, different samskaras related to different duties. So every sampradaya, they have their own tailor-made processes for performing the samskaras. But in ISKCON, sometimes one thing which is actually lacking is that the standard how to perform these different samskaras is something lacking. Maybe it should come up in the future, or maybe some people made some attempt, but there is no standard thing there. So generally in Shraddha, what is the principle in Shraddha? That you are supposed to offer the Vishnu Prasad to the forefathers. So we invite some Grahastha Brahmanas. The Shraddha, we are supposed to invite the Grahastha Brahmanas. We can invite the Grahastha Brahmana devotees, Vaishnavas, or you can invite, if not available as the Grahastha Brahmanas, you can invite. And then offer, making that Brahmana as a representative of the forefather. You offer bhojana, you offer prasadam to the Brahmana and give some dakshina to the Brahmana, and that is the Shraddha actually. And when people perform more elaborately, that Brahmana also performs a fire yajna. And sometimes, if it is not possible to perform fire yajna, okay, feed them prasadam, and whatever dakshina is possible, you can give. Sometimes it is also said, if you are not able to cook and feed prasadam to the Brahmana, then you can at least give some raw rice and certain grains as a charity to the Brahmana, and then give some dakshina as a Brahmana. Whatever to satisfy that person to their best capacity, like the different means are given. Essentially in Shraddha, what we do, we consider that, invite a Grahastha Brahmana, consider him. Why we say Grahastha Brahmana? Because in Shraddha, sometimes we sponsor prasadam in the temple, feed the brahmacharis actually. But if you see, technically speaking, brahmacharis, by deciding not to get married, in one sense, from a dharmic point of view, they have not fulfilled their debt towards the forefathers. From a dharmic point of view, I'm saying. So therefore, it is what the Shastra says, that you invite a Grahastha Brahmana and feed them. So the Grahastha Brahmana, he has actually, by getting married, procreating children, he has satisfied his debts towards the forefathers. You can invite a Grahastha Brahmana, Vaishnava, feed them prasadam, give them some dakshina, and have Krishna Katha in the way when you are performing Shraddha. Have Krishna Katha and some Kirtan. It's a simple way of performing Shraddha. Otherwise, you can consult some. I know in Bombay there are some devotees who also got trained in performing Shraddha. They perform Shraddha in devotees' houses. So maybe we can, to be more particular, we can ask those devotees, we can consult those devotees how to perform Shraddha in your own situation, wherever you are there, how to perform in a practical basis in your situation.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for that. In continuation with that, Shivani Mataji is asking, can girls who is married, can she perform Shraddha for her forefathers, for her parents?
If there is no son in the family. Yeah, very good question. Actually, our Shastras, as I mentioned, Sanatana Dharma Shastras are so flexible that recently one devotee was sharing. This Mataji's husband died around some months back, and they don't have children. And then when she wanted to perform the different Shraddha and different Karya for the husband. So then the Brahmana told that how there are so many people who have the adhikar to perform the Shraddha. The son, okay, son is supposed to perform the Shraddha. The son is not there who can perform. They give so many options are there. So many options are given in the Shastra. So in that way, I don't know the details of the particular this thing, that who are the different candidates who can perform the Shraddha, but the Shastras give many options. Like for example, suppose if the son is not there, only the daughter is there, then to her father and mother, Shraddha can be performed through the son-in-law, I mean through her husband. The son-in-law can perform the Shraddha of his wife's husband and mother. So in that way, there are options given.
Sometimes they say, Prabhuji, if the husband is having his parents and wife, he cannot do the Shraddha for wife's parents.
Yeah, when a person is having one's own parents, then he cannot perform the Shraddha for somebody else without the permission of one's father, something like that. Without the permission of the father, one cannot, or the father and mother, one cannot perform Shraddha for somebody else. So there are certain detailed rules are there. Like we are in ISKCON, like we have ample number of devotees who are learned in, say, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, but especially in relation to Dharma Shastra, we may not have so many devotees who are expert in Dharma Shastra. But you have to consult certain experts in Dharma Shastra, because some devotees are, I'm just trying to attend some classes on Dharma Shastra. So Dharma Shastras give different options. So at present, I'm not aware of the different options, but yeah, even for a son, when the son is not there, the daughter can perform the Shraddha of the parents through her husband. But suppose the husband's parents are alive, then what is the other option? What is the way out? So there is some way out. So maybe Dharma Shastra experts can tell that.
Yes, Prabhuji. They say like you can do some Shanti Puja, but you cannot give Pindadana. Like that in the temple, they said in the.
Achha.
Thank you.
In Kerala, wife and daughters too do Shraddha. Yeah, there may be facilities given in the Dharma Shastra. As I mentioned, this devotee, this Mataji, she is performing Shraddha for her husband. Because there are no sons, but the Shastras allow her to perform the Shraddha. Dharma Shastras give that option. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. I don't see any more questions. If there are no questions or comments, if you are okay, we can end the call here.
Yeah, we can.
Kripa Sindhu gave it.
Srimad Bhagavatam
Jai.
Radhika Vallabha Prabhu ki jai.
Jai. Thank you,
Hare Krishna,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji.
Hare
Pranam.
Krishna.
Koti Dandvat Pranam. Hare Krishna.
Pranam, Prabhuji. Thank you so
Krishna,
much.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Wonderful
Prabhuji.
class.
Thank you everyone for joining
So much
today.
information.
Hare Krishna everyone. Thank you so much for today's class. We'll meet tomorrow. Hare Bol.